The bond between the waves. The trench lay eerily silent once again, the calm surface belying the history etched into its depths. Weeks had quietly slipped by since the hunters had descended upon this underwater realm, wreaking havoc. Now, the ocean had begun its slow but steady recovery, where Tamura Shigaraki's Decay had ravaged the vibrant armour of coral reefs and claimed the lives of soldiers who dared to tread too close to its dark heart. New patches of bright green algae clung tenaciously to the rugged black rock walls, while small schools of fish cautiously re-emerged, darting timidly at the fringes of the vast abyss, exploring their revitalized surroundings. Yet, Tamura barely registered the world around him. He sat perched on a ledge of smooth black stone, his gaze fixated intently on his hands, the same hands that possessed the terrifying power to obliterate anything in their grasp. Everything, that is, except for one significant person. Above him, a familiar green tail glided gracefully through the dim, filtered light of the water, growing closer with each passing moment. Izuku Midoriya, his companion, descended with determination, a small woven pouch secured to his belt, swaying gently with his movements. Tamura glanced upward, intrigued but wary. "You're smiling," he noted, observing the unmistakable glimmer of happiness in Izuku's eyes. Caught off guard, Izuku immediately made an attempt to suppress his smile, only to fail miserably. "Maybe," he replied sheepishly. Tamura squinted at him, a mix of suspicion and curiosity stirring within. "What did you do?" Izuku floated down to join him, his excitement radiating like the bioluminescent organisms that illuminated the depths around them. "Research," he declared proudly. Tamura arched an eyebrow. That word never leads to anything good. Undeterred, Izuku untied the pouch and eagerly spilled its contents into his palm. 3 small shells tumbled out, their surfaces smooth and pale, glowing softly with a bioluminescent blue light that pulsed gently like the breath of the ocean. Tamura tilted his head in curiosity. "Shells?" Izuku nodded vigorously, his enthusiasm infectious. "They're from the ancient reefs near the southern current. Old merfolk traditions say they're used in bonding rituals, you know." Tamura raised an eyebrow higher, taking in Izuku's flushed face. "Bonding?" Izuku's cheeks turned an even deeper shade of crimson. "Yes, well, technically it's symbolic. 2 mer share shells and tie their currents together to form a permanent partnership, or so the stories say." Tamura blinked slowly, processing the weight of Izuku's words. "Deku." Izuku suddenly appeared nervous, shifting uncomfortably. "Yes? Are you proposing something?" The shock nearly caused Izuku to choke on his words. "No, maybe. Scientifically, it could help confirm whether our compatibility is magical or biological." Tamura erupted into laughter, the sound echoing strangely against the trench walls, a bleak cacophony that contrasted sharply with his amusement. Izuku puffed up, indignation rising in him. "I'm serious," he insisted, crossing his arms defiantly. Tomura wiped a joyful tear from the corner of his eye, mirth dancing in his emerald gaze. "You're adorable." "I'm not adorable," Izuku fired back, cheeks still flushed. Tomura smirked, reveling in the moment. "You brought glowing shells to the abyss to test if we're magically bonded," he stated flatly, the absurdity of it striking him yet again. Izuku let out a reluctant sigh, his arms dropping as he reconsidered the situation. "When you say it like that, it sounds weird." "It is weird," Tomura replied, a smile still tugging at his lips, the weight of their shared experiences hanging in the air like the gentle currents that surrounded them. But Tomura's laughter faded into an uneasy silence as he caught sight of something amiss. Izuku's hands, usually steady and confident, were trembling slightly. "You're actually nervous," Tomura observed, his tone shifting from lightheartedness to concern. Izuku averted his gaze, his cheeks flushing under the weight of Tomura's scrutiny. "Of course I am," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Tomura leaned in closer, the space between them narrowing, curiosity flickering in his dark eyes. "Why?" Izuku hesitated for a moment, fighting the turmoil in his chest before finally confiding. "Because if the ritual works, it means the ocean recognizes us as partners." The word hung heavily between them, charged with unspoken emotions, casting a palpable tension in the air. Partners. Tomura felt a tightening sensation in his chest at the weight of that single word. Izuku swallowed, his voice trembling ever so slightly as he continued. "And if it doesn't? Maybe your ability was just temporary tolerance." Tomura's eyes darkened, shadows flickering across his face as he considered the implications. Slowly, he reached out and grasped Izuku's wrist. The contact was warm, grounding, a reminder of how safe he always felt in Izuku's presence. "Idiot," Tomura muttered, a mixture of affection and exasperation lacing his words. Izuku blinked in surprise, feeling his heart race at the gentle jest. Tomura leaned even closer, their foreheads almost touching, breaths mingling in the intimate space. "I don't need some glowing shells to know you're the only one I can touch," he said softly, sincerity threading through his voice. Izuku's freckles turned a deep shade of red, emotion flooding his features. "But," he started, an uncertain protest forming on his lips. Yet Tomura, with a flicker of determination, picked up one of the glowing shells from the table between them. "Show me how it works," he urged, a hint of a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Izuku's eyes widened in disbelief, the spark of hope igniting within him. "Really?" he gasped, a thrill rushing through his veins. Tomura rolled his eyes, though a small smile danced on his lips. "If I'm going to humor your weird ocean marriage ritual, you should at least explain it," he said, his tone playful yet encouraging. At that moment, Izuku lit up like a lanternfish in the deep sea, filled with excitement and affection, ready to share the depths of a ritual that could change everything for them. The ritual was simple, yet deeply profound, rooted in the traditions of the sea. Two merfolk, with scales shimmering in shades of azure and teal, each held a unique shell, one adorned with intricate carvings, and the other smooth and iridescent. They pressed their foreheads together, their breaths mingling as the gentle ocean current flowed seamlessly between them. With careful precision, they tied the shells together using a strand of glistening sea silk, the kind that sparkled like spun moonlight, symbolizing the union of two tides becoming one, an eternal bond in the vastness of the ocean. Izuku elaborated on the entire process, his voice filled with breathless enthusiasm, his green eyes sparkling with excitement. Tamura listened intently, his expression serious and contemplative. When Izuku had finished, he glanced at Tamura and suddenly appeared shy, a flush of color painting his cheeks. "So, we just hold them like this," Izuku said, placing one glowing shell delicately in Tamura's palm. Their fingers brushed against each other, the warmth of the moment sending a shiver through the water. The shell pulsed softly, radiating a gentle luminescence that illuminated their faces. Tamura cast his gaze down, curiosity etched on his features. "Huh." Izuku, undeterred, raised his own shell, its light intertwining with Tamura's. "Ready?" Tamura shrugged nonchalantly. "Sure." As they drifted closer, the water currents swirled gently around them, creating a serene embrace. Izuku pressed his forehead against Tamura's, the warmth of skin against skin igniting a spark. The moment their bodies touched, the shells flared with an unexpected brilliance. Both of them froze, eyes wide with astonishment. The blue bioluminescence burst forth, spreading through the water like rippling stars, casting transient patterns that danced in the deep. Tamura stared, captivated. "That wasn't supposed to happen, was it?" he asked, a hint of uncertainty creeping into his voice. Izuku shook his head slowly, a mixture of wonder and disbelief on his face. "No." The shells pulsed brighter, illuminating the dark water around them. The current wrapped around them like a living creature, thrumming with life and energy. As the glow faded, silence returned to the trench, leaving an air of tranquility in its wake. Izuku blinked down at the connected shells nestled between their hands, still radiating a soft light. "I think the ocean just accepted it," he murmured, awe coloring his voice. Tamura smirked faintly, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "Guess you're stuck with me now." Izuku's laughter bubbled up softly, bright and genuine. "I already was," he replied, warmth flooding the space between them. For a moment, the world around them felt suspended in time, a veil of stillness enveloping them. Then, Tamura spoke quietly, his voice softer than usual. "Deku?" Izuku's gaze snapped up, sensing the weight in Tamura's tone. The usual sharpness and mockery were gone, replaced by something vulnerable. "When they took you, I realized something crucial," Tamura confessed, his eyes downcast, the vulnerability etched into his features. Izuku's heart skipped a beat, anticipation tightening in his chest. Tamura squeezed his hand gently, offering a reassuring connection. You're the only reason I care whether this ocean survives. Izuku's breath caught, a wave of emotion crashing over him. Tamura looked almost sheepish, the edge of his bravado softening. I don't understand most emotions, he admitted hesitantly, but when I thought you were gone, everything felt empty again. Izuku felt his chest ache, the truth of Tamura's words resonating deeply within him. Their eyes locked, a silent conversation unfolding in the depths of their souls. So, if this ritual means I'm bound to you... Tamura shrugged slightly, a soft acceptance in his tone. I'm fine with that. Izuku's smile lit up the water around them, bright and radiant, almost outshining the ethereal glow of the shells. Well then, he said, determination settling in his voice as he tightened the delicate sea silk knot around their shells. Looks like the ocean agrees. Tamura tugged Izuku closer, their tails brushing against each other in the dark water, a physical testament to their entwined destinies. Good, he murmured, because for the first time in his life, Tamura Shigaraki had found something he refused to let decay, a precious bond in the depth of the ocean's embrace. And in that sacred moment, the ocean itself bore witness to the choice he made to keep it safe. The king of the abyss. The trench had always been silent, not peaceful, just empty. For centuries, creatures of the deep avoided the territory ruled by Tamura Shigaraki. Anything that brushed his skin turned to drifting grey dust, and the ocean currents carried whispers of the monster who devoured reefs. But lately, the trench had begun to change, because the monster wasn't alone anymore. Beside him drifted Izuku Midoriya, green tail glimmering faintly as he scribbled in the ever-present notebook tied to his belt. Tamura lay back against a ridge of black volcanic rock, one arm lazily draped over Izuku's waist. You've been writing for 3 hours, Tamura remarked, glancing at Izuku, who was hunched over his notebook. Izuku didn't even look up, his pencil moving rapidly across the pages. I'm documenting the environmental recovery patterns following your decay burst, he replied, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. Tamura groaned, feigning exasperation. You're studying the trench like it's a science project. Izuku couldn't help but beam back at him, the sparkle in his green eyes shining brighter. It is a science project. This place is fascinating. Tamura sighed dramatically and pulled Izuku a little closer, their shoulders brushing. Deku. Izuku asked, finally glancing up, startled from his focused state. Stop researching and pay attention to your partner, Tamura said with a playful smirk, allowing a hint of affection to seep through his casual tone. Izuku's freckles turned pink under Tamura's gaze. He finally closed his notebook with a reluctant sigh. Okay. But before he could say anything further, the trench trembled violently. Both of them froze, the air suddenly charged with an electric tension. Tamura's eyes sharpened, his crimson irises narrowing. That wasn't me, he murmured, scanning their surroundings. Another deep rumble rolled through the abyss, a sound that resonated from somewhere deeper than even Tamura usually travelled. It felt almost alive. Izuku turned his gaze downward into the endless darkness that seemed to swallow the dim light around them. "Did something collapse down there?" he asked, worry lacing his voice. Tamura shook his head slowly, his expression serious. "No." Suddenly, something massive began to shift in the depths. The water grew colder, a palpable weight settling in as the faint glow from the trench walls dimmed dramatically. Izuku's breath caught in his throat. "Tamura." "Yeah," Tamura replied, his voice a whisper of tension, as he felt the enormity of the moment. A pair of enormous golden eyes slowly opened in the inky darkness, sparkling like stars against the abyssal backdrop. Eyes so ancient that they seemed to draw the very essence of the ocean into their gaze. The creature rose from the abyss floor, its long body more extensive than a reef wall, covered in jagged, armoured scales that resembled black stone. Vast fins unfolded like tattered banners, fanning out in the current with a grace that belied their size. Izuku gasped, whispering in awe, "That's impossible." Even Tamura looked impressed, his indifference momentarily shattered. "Huh." The creature studied them silently, its enormous form looming like a titan. Then another shape emerged behind it, followed by yet another. Soon, the trench was teeming with massive silhouettes, ancient abyss creatures rarely seen in any ocean myth. A spiral-horned serpent glided through the water, its skin glimmering like polished obsidian. A massive eel with mysterious, glowing blue scars slithered by. And a colossal crustacean, its shell rough and barnacle-covered, loomed the size of a shipwreck. Izuku's eyes widened with boundless wonder. "Tamura, I think we're surrounded," he breathed, his heart racing with both excitement and fear. Tamura tilted his head, taking in their surroundings. "Yeah," he replied, his usual confidence slightly shaken. But strangely, none of the creatures attacked. Instead, they drifted closer, slowly circling around them like a spectral audience watching an important event. The largest leviathan moved forward first, its enormous head lowering gracefully toward Tamura, a gesture both majestic and intimidating. Izuku instinctively grabbed Tamura's arm, his pulse quickening. "Maybe we should leave," he suggested, the hint of panic creeping into his voice. Tamura remained rooted in place. "Wait," he said, curiosity peaking amidst the tension. The Leviathan's golden eyes locked onto Tamura's crimson ones, their stares holding an unspoken weight. For a moment, the entire trench was enveloped in silence, the water around them vibrating with the intensity of the encounter. Then, in a baffling display, the Leviathan bowed its massive head. Izuku's mind raced as he grappled with disbelief. "What?" he stammered, struggling to process the situation unfolding before him. Behind the Leviathan, the other ancient creatures followed suit, lowering their massive bodies in the water one by one, like subjects kneeling before an otherworldly throne illuminated by the ghostly glow of the trench walls. Tamura blinked in astonishment. "Huh," he said, taken completely by surprise. Izuku stared at him, voice tinged with disbelief. Did they just bow to you?" Tamura, scratching his neck awkwardly, managed to muster a casual response. "I mean, I do live here. Izuku clutched Tamura's shoulders, wide-eyed with urgency. No, Tamura, this is not normal. The leviathan let out a deep, rumbling sound, a vibration that echoed through the depths. It didn't feel aggressive. It felt almost like recognition, an acknowledgement of something greater. Izuku flipped frantically through his notebook, searching through the pages filled with his research. Oh my God, he exclaimed, a sense of revelation washing over him. Tamura sighed heavily. What? Izuku pointed eagerly to an old sketch. Ancient ocean legends talk about a king of the abyss, a being who controls decay and destruction in the deep sea. They say he's a ruler of all the abyssal creatures. Look. Tamura stared at the page, then back at the massive creatures bowing reverently around him. You're kidding, he said, disbelief evident in his voice. Izuku looked at him with a slowly dawning realization that sent excitement coursing through him. They think you're him. Tamura groaned in frustration. Oh, great, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. Izuku was practically vibrating with excitement. Tamura, you don't understand. These creatures are older than the reef kingdoms. They're recognizing you as their ruler. Tamura rubbed his face exasperatedly. I did not sign up for this. As if acknowledging their conversation, the leviathan nudged its massive head closer to Tamura, its giant eyes full of expectation. Izuku whispered dramatically, It's waiting. For what? Tamura inquired, uncertainty creeping into his tone. Orders, Izuku concluded, realization hitting him hard. Tamura stared at the array of ancient sea monsters filling the trench, their gaze fixed on him. He sighed, the weight of the moment sinking in. Deku. Yes, Izuku responded, anticipation building. You're the one who studies ocean politics. Izuku straightened proudly, his chest puffed up a little. That's true. Tamura gently nudged him forward. Congratulations. You're now the royal advisor to the king of the abyss. Izuku sputtered in disbelief. I'm not... The leviathan rumbled again, more insistently this time. Tamura leaned closer to Izuku, his voice low. They like you too. Izuku froze in place. What? Tamura pointed subtly, and Izuku turned to see several smaller abyss creatures had gathered curiously around him, their large eyes filled with intrigue. One massive eel nudged his tail gently against Izuku's leg. Izuku melted instantly at the soft gesture. Okay, they're adorable, he said, a grin spreading across his face, despite the gravity of the situation. Tamura snorted, amusement evident in his expression. Deku, that one could eat a whale. Izuku patted the eel's head, undeterred. It's just misunderstood. Tamura stared at him incredulously. You're going to pet every terrifying creature in the ocean, aren't you? Yes, Izuku affirmed firmly, a determination shining in his eyes. Tamura laughed quietly, the tension between them easing. The ancient leviathan observed them both, its massive presence a silent reminder of their extraordinary predicament. Then, in a gesture of respect, it bowed its massive head again. The message was crystal clear. The abyss had chosen its king. And, strangely enough, its king came with a bright green partner who refused to stop taking notes, ever eager to uncover the secrets of their domain. Tamura draped an arm around Izuku's shoulders, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Guess we rule the trench now." Izuku looked up at him, a soft smile gracing his features.